And welcome to another episode of Rico's Rants. I am your host, Rico DiGiorgio. Tonight, I just did another film review, which is why I'm wearing the same shirt. I don't want people to think he never changes his clothes. I change my clothes. I just enjoyed doing that last one. I'm going to do another one on a different film, radically different. This is a film that I recommend frequently at work and to people in general. I'm always saying you should check this film out. Really good, really underrated. Boom. The film is Horns. And I'll tell why. So, first of all, Horns is an adaptation from a book written by the author Joe Hill. Who is Joe Hill? Well, I didn't know who he was until I'd heard about this movie and I'd heard the plot. I said, that's fucking bizarre. And then I found it was a book, read the book, did some research. Joe Hill is Stephen King's son. And halfway through reading the book, I'm like, wow, this is really reminiscent of Stephen King. This is really good shit. Turns out he's his fucking son. So that made me really want to see the movie a whole lot more. But I'm not going to talk about the book. The book is great. You should read the book. But the movie in particular is very, very good. That is Daniel Radcliffe. So there are a lot of people who don't like Daniel Radcliffe, who don't think he was a good Harry Potter. I admit, early on when I was watching the movies, in the beginning, I felt his acting was very stiff and wooden. But I also kept saying, he's a kid. Kids don't really act very well unless you're in the Goonies, which you should see that movie if you haven't seen the Goonies. You should also see a review that this guy I know called Rico. He does reviews, and he just did one of an episode of Rico's Rants called The Goonies. Watch my shit, damn it. So, Horns is called Horns because I don't know if you could see, but Daniel Radcliffe has got horns sticking out of his skull, and there's two. You don't shoot, but it's it's there. He is the main. Daniel Radcliffe has grown as an actor, and he shows it very much in this because this was sort of his first film that he did where. I think he plays. It's the first film he does where I think he plays an American. Although I think he may have played an American in like an Allen Ginsberg movie, which is weird to say, but he played Allen Ginsberg. No, he does a flawless American accent, which, let's be fair, the Brits are better at doing American accents than the Americans are doing a British accent. So he does a really good job. I also remember reading that this may or may not be true, that he based his accent and voice on the director of the first two Harry Potter films, Chris Columbus, who, ironically enough, I talked about in the other video because he wrote the screenplay to Goonies. Go watch my shit, guys. Come on. What are you doing? Well, if you're watching this shit, you might as well watch that shit. So what am I saying? His name is Ig, or Iggy, but it's really Ignotus. And he is the prime suspect of his girlfriend's rape and murder, and there's no other suspects, and so it's probably maybe about, I want to say, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a month and a half after his girlfriend's rape and murder. I think it may even be a year and they just haven't settled it or something like that. He has not been arrested because there's no proof, but he is the main suspect. And he's always being chased by the media who call him a rapist and a murderer. And he's just being an outcast, feeling like an outcast. He's always running away from the media and shit like that. And one night in a after getting drunk, he goes to the site where his girlfriend was found, raped and murdered, which is in the location of their treehouse it was their sort of getaway that they have had since they were children. He and his girlfriend had been together since they were kids. And there's a whole backstory about how she moves to his neighborhood and how he and a friend sort of go try and compete for her affections. And ultimately, no matter what, she was already always attracted to Daniel Radcliffe, his character. So they fall in love very young. Like, they've been together since they were 12 years old. They're probably 25, so they've been together 12 to 13 years, which is very unusual, but they literally are childhood sweethearts. It's actually kind of awesome to see. In a drunken stupor, and he's really, really upset and pissed off that, she's dead and that he's the suspect, and he's grieving. He goes to where she was found, and everyone has put all these, very Christian candles and prayers and rest in pieces, shit that the girlfriend was not really a fan of, and he felt it was sacrilegious, and that all that, her not her resting place, but where she died is covered in stuff that she wouldn't have wanted and wouldn't have appreciated. So he gets drunk and he stomps on some candles and some prayers and prayer cards and pisses on them. Next morning, heavily hungover, laying on a kitchen floor at a woman's house that he, in order to deal with grief and emotional loss, has been sleeping with, who has always been in love with him, but he's always, been with this other chick. He wakes up on her floor, feeling something growing in his skull. Looks in the bathroom mirror and sees these horns growing, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, eventually they get out to here, and they're very much devilish horns, but more Old Testament, long Beelzebub horns, not dink like that, not that tiny little things that's in the classic devil movies. So he realizes quite early on that when he's around people, they acknowledge the horns, but immediately kind of forget about them. And the horns give off this sort of weird power where when people are around him, they give out their deepest, darkest secrets. And they almost want permission they want his approval. For example, and I'm going to try not to spoil this movie too much. There are spoilers, but I'm not going to spoil the movie too much, especially not the ending or anything like that. Because this is a great film where you should just it's a mystery. I don't want to ruin a mystery, but I want you to see it. He goes to a hospital, because we all would, to see what the fuck these things are. And as he's in the waiting room, waiting to be seen, there's a mother and a little toddler, about 3 or 4 years old. And the toddler is having a hissy fit, is having a temper tantrum, and screaming really shrill. The mother, who's sitting next to Daniel Radcliffe, leans over and says, and like I said, wants approval, is very much she says, I'd like to just smack the shit out of my kid. Do you think I should? And he's like, no, what the fuck is wrong with you? And she's like, oh, okay. Well, and then she starts revealing that she is cheating on her husband with her. I mean, this is the tame way of how I'm saying it. She says something else. Her black golf instructor, she says something else, and her arm brushes his arm, and for a second he sees the woman in the midst of fucking with her instructor. So now he's aware he has this power where he can actually, if he touches someone, he can see some of their secrets. And so, and the little girl, the girl who's having a temper tantrum, she goes up to him and says, "I hate mommy. I want to burn mommy up." Fuck. So it doesn't matter what age, like, anybody is vulnerable to this power. So he starts using this power as the horns are growing more and more, as he's sort of becoming more and more devilish looking, to try and track down the real killer. So now he's trying to solve the mystery, and it's again, I'm not going to spoil the ending. There are lots of twists and turns, but not where it's like, oh fuck, I wasn't expecting that. It's just like, oh shit, they went there. That's wow. The cast is great. Daniel Radcliffe is really, really strong in this. And it's really against what he normally does. It is a fantasy-oriented film, so there is that aspect to it. He hadn't broken away from doing a normal film, because every film that he had done until one movie called What If, which I really enjoyed as well, has always been some form of a fantasy or a time period. Like, he did Harry Potter, and even though it's set modern age kind of stuff, very fantasy oriented, dragons and wizards and shit like that. And then he did a time period film where it's set in the 40s, the Ginsberg film I was talking about. And then he did The Woman in Black, which was a ghost horror film, so another fantasy element. So this was another fantasy film, but he hadn't. But he's really strong in this. He's a darker. He's darker than Harry Potter. He's darker than most of the other characters he played. This is very drunk, chain smoking, cursing, which is another thing we hadn't seen. We hadn't heard Harry. I was kind of like, holy shit! I heard Harry Potter fucking say fuck. It's kind of awesome, kind of weird. You could tell he's like, I love being Harry Potter, but I have words to say, man. And I've seen interviews with him. He doesn't hold back. He swears a lot. Which is just funny. So he's really good in this. The girl is Juno Temple. And Juno Temple, I had seen her in a couple other films. She has a small role in The Dark Knight Rises, as sort of Anne Hathaway's friend or possible lover, or well, I don't know what the fuck they didn't really establish a relationship. Juno Temple is good in this. There are, it's a very cutesy couple relationship they have, and the fact that they start out as kids is really kind of cool. And there are flashbacks. There's really two stories to this film, because it's all about how they first met and the things that lead up to that, plus some big incidences in their childhood. Because while it's not a Stephen King movie, it's very much reminiscent of a Stephen King movie. It's got elements of Stand By Me or It, or all the those movies where like kids are in charge, that kind of shit. It also kind of reminded me a lot of the movie The Butterfly Effect, because if you've ever seen that one, the flashbacks are just as important and just as interesting as what's happening in modern day. In fact, that's the whole point, is he's always going back to fix the future. But I can't review that film right now. But it remind me a lot of that. This movie, who else is in this? Max Minghella is in this, and I hadn't seen him in a lot of stuff. He's the son of Anthony Minghella, who was a director and I think died. The last thing I saw Max in was The Social Network, which is really funny because he plays an Indian American in that one, and he's Italian British in this, or in life. I was surprised that he was as an Indian actor and I mean Indian, like India, not Native American. I mean, that was the only thing I'd seen him in. He's good in that. He's good in this. Randomly, Heather Graham is in this, and I was really surprised because I hadn't seen anything with Heather Graham since, like, she's not doing a lot of strong work or most work. She's doing, like, the last thing I saw her was, apart from this, was The Hangover Part 3. Like, she is no longer the go-to, that we had all kind of fell in love with in the mid-90s. She was in From Hell. She was in Boogie Nights. I mean, she's good in this, which she should get more work. It's just like, you could tell she was kind of like, this is a weird script. This is all I can do. I can't turn this down because I need to eat. She's like, when is there going to be another Hangover? Please give me another Hangover. I got a mortgage. I don't mean to hate on Heather Graham that much. I think she's awesome, personally. I've always liked her. Who else? David Morse is in this. David Morse was one of the guards in The Green Mile. He was in that Shia LaBeouf movie, Disturbia. He played the bad guy, Disturbia. Big, imposing guy. He plays the father of the girlfriend in this. So there's a couple scenes where he and Daniel Radcliffe square off. And, like, David Morse, like, cocks a shotgun and aims at him. He's like, you get the fuck off my property. You killed my daughter, blah, 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 blah. James Remar is in this. He played the dad in Dexter. He played Dexter's dad. He's always good. And he's good in this. There's another actor, Joe Anderson, I think. He plays Iggy's older brother. And there's some fucked up scenes with him. I mean, there's a lot of fucked up scenes in this movie. There are parts where, because he has his power, he can't control who gets affected when he's nearby someone. So, for example, he's finding out secrets from people that he closely trusts and has always thought that he had his back, like his parents. Even his parents think that he killed her. And it's really like he's just going to people and being like, just being crushed. And then there's a couple of good scenes where he's like, he goes to his mom and his dad. He's like, Dad, Mom. He goes to after he sees his dad's like, how dare you kill that, poor girl. She was my favorite thing about you, which is a great line. He goes to his mom and he's like, Mom, you're going to say some shit, so just fucking say it. Like, he just defeated and just accepting, like, I'm going to be told a bunch of terrible shit. And there's this part where she's like, I love you. And he's like, oh, she believes me. Everything's okay. And then she says, but I don't want to be your mom anymore. I every time you talk, I want to hold my breath and scream and sing loud songs, and I just want you to go. Can you just go away? I love you, and I'll always love you, but can you just go away? I don't want to be your mom anymore. And he's just like, it's back to, oh, fuck, Mom, come on, I'm trying. Great film. And I recommend it to a lot of people at work and in life, and they've all said, this is really good, really underrated. So, I would rate it, 4 stars. The soundtrack is really good. The acting is pretty good. It's really dark and moody and very sort of demonic looking. But it's really kind of funny in its own way. There's a great funny scene. There's a lot of funny scenes, but I wouldn't call this a horror film, but I would definitely call it a fantasy mystery with some horror tinged inside of it. Like, there's no other way of saying it. It's like a Stephen King movie, but not your stereotypical Stephen King horror film. In the same sense that The Shawshank Redemption is a Stephen King film, but not a horror film. It's just kind of a fucked up film. but this is his son. So this is a junior Stephen King fucked up film. 4 stars. Really enjoy it. Please give it a shot. Once again, it's Horns. There's the poster. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Give it a shot, guys. Send a lot of love my way. I love you all to death. Salute.